Andy Weir's 2011 novel, The Martian, made into a movie in 2015 starring Matt Damon, captured the imagination of readers around the world. In this novel, an astronaut has to survive for roughly 18 months on Mars after being abandoned by the rest of his team during a violent dust storm. During this ordeal on Mars, he faces constant threats, from the lack of food to equipment failure to sheer boredom. While this book is great for many reasons, a large contributor to its popularity is the location itself, Mars. The general public has been fascinated by the red planet for centuries. The idea of actually sending humans there is enticing to many, and some say that they may be closer than we think. Actually, in my opinion, the astronauts should all be from South Dakota, as they would have a lot of experience living somewhere flat, cold, dusty, and relatively isolated. In the meantime, however, we have to be content with sending rovers. Today, we're going to follow them on their journey to Mars by discussing their goals and some of the challenges facing them, then take an in-depth look into each of their stories. Now, we aren't just spending billions of dollars to send rovers into space just for them to take selfies. Scientists from many different fields want some sort of information from these rovers, from soil samples to atmospheric readings to sensing for earthquakes, or Marsquakes, as they would technically be known. However, the main reason for sending rovers to Mars is to search for evidence of life. As far as we know, all life requires a source of water, so if we can prove that there was water on Mars, it opens up the possibility of life having existed there as well. Maybe not little green Martians, but life nonetheless. However, there are many challenges facing Mars rovers. Many of these would be easy to overlook, but actually end up being some of the most difficult to overcome. One of those issues is actually landing the rover. During their brief attempt to land on Mars, the Soviets tried using a series of parachutes and thrusters, but it didn't go so well. In fact, the Soviets account for 62% of the 26 failed Mars missions, a total that jumps to 70% when the failures of the Russian Federation are added in, which is interesting, as you would expect the communists to be able to land on the red planet. Maybe they were Russian. The MER and Pathfinder missions, however, used a bunch of airbags. They basically strapped a few dozen airbags made out of a material similar to that found in spacesuits to the rover, and then inflated them as it fell through the air. The rover then bounced around for a minute before settling down. Nowadays, we use a much more complicated method. The sky crane lowers the rover on a tether and then flies off and crashes somewhere. The Curiosity rover, which is about the size and weight of an SUV, successfully used this method, and the upcoming Perseverance rover is equipped with it as well. Now, there was a plan to use what were known as penetrators, where the rover would impact at over 350 miles per hour and burrow deep into the ground, protected by a thick outer shell. Unsurprisingly, none of the rovers that attempted this method survived. Go figure. Another challenge facing Mars rovers is something that most adults, and far too many of my peers in my opinion, are very comfortable with: driving. You see, communication with an object on Mars isn't instantaneous. Depending on how far apart the two planets are, it can take anywhere from 3 to 22 minutes for a signal to reach Mars. This means that we can't drive or land a rover in real time. There's no way for us to react to dangers or mistakes in a timely manner. Now, there isn't traffic or rover-eating monsters to deal with, so you might assume it's no big deal, right? Just don't run into that rock over there and you're good. Well, you have to remember, this rover isn't on Earth. Mars' surface is covered in a layer of regolith, which is a loose layer of sand, dust, rocks, and dirt. In some areas, the Martian regolith is pretty unstable. A section could collapse under the rover's weight, or the rover could get stuck in soft sand, or the rover could break through a seemingly solid crust and get stuck in the dust underneath, and unfortunately, AAA's response times to Mars aren't great. Now, there are many other challenges a successful rover needs to be able to deal with. Many, from the weaker gravity to the extreme temperatures, which can range from negative 13 degrees during the day to negative 125 degrees at night. However, the other main issue I want to talk about today is the storms. Yes, the infamous dust storms that stranded Mark Watney. Despite the much thinner atmosphere, these storms can cover the entire globe in a thick layer of dust. Until Curiosity, Mars rovers ran on solar panels, so when the sky darkened for a few weeks due to a storm, they ran out of power. If the battery got too low, then the heaters wouldn't work and the rover would succumb to the extreme cold. Now, there have only been 4 rovers on Mars: Sojourner, Spirit, Opportunity, and Curiosity. A 5th, Perseverance, is scheduled to land on February 18th. The first of these, Sojourner, arrived on the 4th of July, 1997, as part of the Pathfinder mission. Along with some atmospheric and geological samples, images of the rocks around the site taken by Sojourner suggested that there may have once been water there. Other than this corgi-sized rover's main claim to fame is just Being the first rover on Mars, it wasn't designed to move very far from its lander, and over the course of its mission, only ever traveled about the length of a football field. Almost 7 years later, in January of 2004, the Mars Exploration Rovers, or MER, landed on Mars. These rovers, named Spirit and Opportunity, landed on opposite sides of the planet. Unlike Sojourner, these rovers were designed for long-distance travel. Spirit had to face a lot of adversity throughout its lifetime and needed to have an indomitable spirit to keep pushing through. In the spring of 2009, Spirit broke through the crust of the regolith and got stuck. NASA was unable to free the little rover, and it served as a stationary science platform until May of 2011. Opportunity, on the other hand, seemed to have incredible luck. When it landed, it bounced perfectly into a small crater, which NASA scientists referred to as a hole-in-one. Opportunity also came across several rock formations indicating the existence of water, including a vein of hydrated calcium sulfate, which Cornell professor Steve Squires called the clearest evidence for liquid water on Mars that we have found in our 8 years on the planet. Opportunity also had its life expectancy extended by several small dust devils cleaning off its solar panels, one of the few times where Mars has actually helped the rovers survive. Sadly, on June 10, 2018, Opportunity powered down to wait out the largest dust storm ever recorded on Mars, which covered the entire planet in a thick layer of dust for a few months. The rover never responded again, and in February of 2019, NASA officially declared the historic mission over. Opportunity still holds the record for the longest distance traveled on another planetary body at over 26 miles, or a little longer than a marathon. It also holds the current record for the longest time active on another planetary body, at over 14 years, far beyond the initial 90-day life expectancy. The scientific data from Spirit and Opportunity prove that water did exist on Mars at some point, as well as contributing to a number of other fields. However, as historic as these two rovers' achievements were, two of their younger cousins may eventually outpace them. The Curiosity rover, which landed in 2012, was instantly a landmark mission. Not only was it record-breaking in terms of size and weight, but it was also the first rover to land with the sky crane method. 8 years later, and it is still going strong, and has the opportunity to pass Opportunity's records for both distance and time. Additionally, Curiosity runs on a nuclear-powered generator. That's right, we've gotten so good at this that our rovers are powered by a large chunk of plutonium. Eat your heart out, Russia. Curiosity is also packed with scientific instruments, measuring the weather and radiation levels daily, as well as conducting complex scientific experiments on the nearby rocks and soil. It already has several achievements to its name, including finding several areas that were covered in water at some point, detecting unexplained spikes in methane and oxygen in the atmosphere, and coming across organic compounds in the soil, the necessary building blocks for all life. While having these organic compounds doesn't prove that life did exist on Mars, coming across both water and organic compounds means that life absolutely could have been there. This brings us to our most recent rover. So recent, in fact, it hasn't even gotten there yet. The Perseverance rover is scheduled to land on February 18th, 2021 in the Jezero crater. It's about the same size as Curiosity and similarly packed with scientific instruments. Additionally, Perseverance is going to be collecting rock and soil samples to be taken back to Earth by future missions, allowing scientists to study them with heavier, more expensive tools. NASA scientists are hoping that Perseverance will finish the work of its predecessors by confirming, once and for all, the existence of life on Mars at some point during its history. These little rovers have had a tremendous impact on the way we see Mars, from the scientific discoveries they've made to the beautiful images they've taken, yes, including the selfies. Furthermore, they're paving the way towards something that has fascinated humanity for decades, colonizing the stars. The atmospheric, chemical, and geographical data that has and will be taken from these rovers will be invaluable for any manned mission to come. Additionally, confronting the challenges facing Mars rovers has better prepared us to face the even more extensive challenges that would face human astronauts. Hopefully, someday, the fantasy of the Martian will become a reality. Minus the abandoned astronaut part, of course, because no one wants that.